Members of Council. Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation and the good work. I've been fortunate enough to see these teams in action as well, and it makes an enormous difference. So we wish them every success and stay safe out there. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is by Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare. I will call on Alistair Smith, VP of Corporate Services and the CFO of the Muskoka Hospital, as well as Maureen Miller, the Chair of the Board of Directors, who are here today to talk about funding the local share. Ms. Miller, Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Minor detail. Chair Lehman, members of District Council and District staff, thank you for sharing your meeting time today with Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare. With me today is Alistair Smith, Chief Financial Officer for the hospital, and I would also like to recognize others in the gallery today that have worked hard on the local share contributions to the hospital. Those being Bruce Schouten and Anna Landry, both members of the board of Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare, and also Megan Burns from the Huntsville Hospital Foundation, as well as Dan Brooks and Leah Walker from the South Muskoka Hospital Foundation. Are we working on a page up or does it? Okay, we'll go on there. Okay, great, thank you. We're all aware that good decisions often take much more time than is originally contemplated. The development of a formula for the local share component of our new hospitals started early in the planning process. We are very thankful for all of those discussions. To remind us on how the process started, I went back to the minutes of the first local share committee meeting, which took place on May 1st, 2019. There have been a lot of changes in 4.5 years. There were 19 people at the table, representing almost all Muskoka municipalities and the district, North Parry Sound municipalities, both hospital foundations, and the hospital board. Of those 19 representatives, only 3 still remain on the committee. That would be Mayor Glover, Catherine Crane from the Huntsville Hospital Foundation, and myself. However, the people at the table may have changed, but the focus of the local share committee has not. In our first meeting, the following principles were agreed to, and I quote from the minutes. The meeting generated great discussion at a high level and resulted in agreement by all those present for the following key outcomes: a commitment to the local share challenge and support for the proposed group approach to the largest fundraising initiative in Muskoka's history. An understanding that the estimated cost for the local share will continue to change as we move through the ministry process, and that it can be expected that there will be ongoing changes as the project moves forward. And finally, the final capital plan submission cannot be made without a description of the local fundraising approach. Remaining focused on the long-term goals for the hospital redevelopment has been hard work and has involved many people, too many to thank them all individually today. Thank you to the District of Muskoka Chair and staff, and thank you to all the municipalities, their elected officials, and their staff today who have contributed consistently on this issue over the last 5 years. Your work has been very, very important to get us to today. Contributions have ranged from new ideas that encouraged out-of-the-box thinking. They also included explaining why history can be our friend, but also our foe on this project. And most importantly, supporting a collective vision. And as with all complicated issues, contributions from all community members also included comments such as, "Maureen, are you kidding?" And it also included Maureen, no, that won't ever happen here. But what it also included is, Maureen, of course we can do that. So thank you to all of you, for being engaged, honest, and working hard and providing frank answers to hard questions. The focus of the funding for local share has been on the hospitals, the bricks and mortar expression required to deliver acute care. But what we are really doing is building a better blueprint for tomorrow's healthcare. We are focusing our work on a systems approach through Made in Muskoka Healthcare, anchored by the 2 new hospital builds. This involves continued pursuit by MAHC to expand partnerships that deliver healthcare beyond the walls of the hospital, reflecting our community, how it functions now, and preparing the hospitals to also reflect the future communities. As we heard from our first presenter today, the healthcare system right across Canada is under extreme pressure to transform, to be more adaptive and collaborative, and to rethink access and service delivery. So we are approaching the build of the hospitals to respond to that pressure, but also to reaffirm local healthcare, preserving the best of what works today and enhancing it. The end product will ensure that what we have is sustainable, adaptive, and always aligned with where we live, where we work, and where we play. Since the announcement by the province in April 2022 that Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare was now funded to move through stage 1.3, we've been pretty busy engaging with our community. Every person who lives in this community is a stakeholder in this project. So we've been working hard to share information and listen to our communities with community open houses, service club presentations, lake association meetings, etc. All 196 of them. And many of you have been at those. And we've had some very, very good discussion. Our website has also been visited regularly, and we've heard many things from many participants. I was encouraged and a bit surprised by what we heard. We did not hear very often, don't build new hospitals, but we heard continuously, hurry up and build the hospitals. And we heard the number one question overall had to be, when will the new hospitals be built? And of course, many stakeholders also asked us how we would raise a local share and how we would fund this project. Overall, we have communicated continuously through a variety of communication tools and are confident that we have heard from our community and are actively taking their comments into consideration during our process. I'm going to turn it over to Alistair now to continue with a review of some of the statistics that we've been asked about. So, Alistair, page down.
How are you?
We'll dance for a
musical
minute.
chairs. So Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare, let me see, does that work? That works perfect. Serves a catchment area of over 4,000 square kilometers. 3 towns, 3 townships, 2 Indigenous communities. As well as a significant amount of activity we get from East Perry Sound, the Almaguin Highlands, and even the Algonquin Highlands. We have over 60,000 residents, almost 3 times that during the summer months, over 3.2 million visitors to the area, and 1 million to Algonquin Park alone. In the last fiscal year, over 90% of the residents of Muskoka received all of their health care at one of the facilities that we operate or within the greater Simcoe Muskoka area. The rest would go to facilities where they require specialty care that we don't get here, or is only available in academic health science centers. These are examples of the types of activities that Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare provides. Surgeries, chemotherapy, renal dialysis, diagnostic services, and soon to be a new MRI. These are not insignificant numbers. The trend has been in the last 10 to 15 years that you will see things moving more ambulatory. What that means, more outpatient basis. In fact, hospitals used to be described by the number of beds they had. I will tell you in the last 10 to 15 years, that's completely changed. And then in the next 10 to 15 years, I expect it to do the same. Most healthcare will become an outpatient ambulatory focus, more community-based, more services that are even closer to home than they are now. You will still have beds,
but the purpose of those beds and the direction of how healthcare is provided will be changing. To give you a sense about emergency department use, those circles represent large amounts of visits. And the blue ones are the ones that are predominantly going to Huntsville. The pink ones are the visits that are predominantly going to Bracebridge from each of those major communities. But I think in the handout you got, it actually outlined these details, but it shows that each one of the areas described by people around this chamber here have their populations using Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare as a principal provider for their emergency visit care. And at the very bottom of that chart, you'll notice that there are still almost 8,000 visits a year for people who are not of primary residence up in this area, meaning they are from out of country, out of province, or are living down somewhere else and visiting Muskoka. To give you a sense of the economic benefit that this new build is going to have in the region, there are going to be over 400 in a peak, 400 well-paying construction jobs working on these projects. There will be municipal tax-based growth because of increased staff. We're going to be getting at least 35 new hospital beds, notwithstanding the higher focus on outpatient ambulatory care. So we'll be attracting new families to the region. The ripple effects will be throughout the entire region. At the right-hand side of this shows you a graph of where our current staff actually live. And these are just the staff who are staff. These are not physicians because they're independent practitioners. But it shows you that 755 employees earning over $57 million in total gross compensation are distributed throughout the entire area. That will grow as the population of the hospital services grows as well. These are people who are coming in, developing families and routes. They're buying gas, groceries, home amenities, everything that they would need for their homes in this area. This is a significant aspect of what Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare represents to you and your constituents. And back to you.
So when I mentioned earlier in my presentation that we were somewhat surprised with some of the questions that stakeholders asked, one of the areas of questioning in virtually every town hall presentation was about the construction of the buildings and how they would feel and how they would be Muskoka. There was also a significant interest in how they would operate from an efficiency perspective. Would they be built using the latest green technology construction techniques to ensure that provincial healthcare dollars would be spent on healthcare, not on heating and maintaining unused space? They were great questions, and they have formed an important part of the ongoing work of the construction team. With a green commitment in mind, Made in Muskoka Healthcare, in the context of its natural surroundings, will be built green, will be Muskoka, and when complete, will operate in an environmentally sustainable manner. Efficient, sustainable, Made in Muskoka Healthcare. Thank you again for your time today, and Alistair and I are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Oh yeah, but the district's going to supply them with transit.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Miller. Mr. Smith. Questions?
We're going to have
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chairman, and through you. And first of all, thank you to you both and your entire organization and all of the 35 or 40 people that have worked on all of this. It's hugely important. The concern I have and the trouble I'm having is seeing what's happening in some other regions. I know Niagara Falls recently got to $3.6 billion from an original quote of around $1 billion. So I want to know if we commit our district to $77 million, is that where it's capped? Should these two hospitals end up costing $2 or $2.5 billion? What would happen if that was the case?
Thank you, Councillor Morrison, through you, Chair Lehman. At this point in time, Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare has only the budget we have been given by the province. If the costs are to increase substantially, we will have to be back at the drawing board, looking at ways to create more efficiency, looking at ways to solve that. One of the things that should be reminded to everyone is when we first submitted our application in 2019 to build the 2 new hospitals with the basic information that we had included at the time. That was before COVID. And COVID has comprehensively and substantively changed how healthcare will be delivered in acute care facilities in the future. So many of the beds that were 2 to a room or 4 to a room in past hospital builds will now be single rooms. So you will potentially remember, and I think it's covered in the staff report, that there was quite a substantive increase happened in the build cost. That reflects most of that. But the reality is we only have that much. We have the money that has been allocated by the province now and nothing more. So if those numbers are to increase, we would have to come back to the local share committee. We would have to continue the discussion with our partners.
Thanks, Councillor Morrison. Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the report. I certainly appreciate it. And I wanted to thank you, Maureen, and your team for the many years of hard work, discussion, perseverance, patience. It's been a long ride. I want to say something to all of council that helped me in the early stages of this. Of course, with the numbers we're looking at, fear took over. And there I was freaking out one day, and I had a senior resident come in and talk to me, and he's very well known. I won't say his name, save him that embarrassment. But he said to me, you know, I said to him, what are we going to do about this big number? And he said, I got to tell you, if I'm going to be taxed, do it in healthcare. And he said, I can accept that. Which he's quite a taxpayer. His taxes are extremely high. So if that is helpful anyway. I wanted to just quick ask about capacity currently, where we're headed with the huge growth we're seeing in all the towns and townships. Is there any comment you can make with regards to that as we move forward in the future? Thank you.
Just to clarify, sir, capacity in what sense?
I know currently we're at 150%. I'm just talking about growth as well. The towns are growing, Huntsville, Bracebridge, Gravenhurst, as well as the townships. Where are we headed? I understand Maureen answered it briefly about this is our best guess, but if there's anything else you could add.
And I'll be very brief because there's not a precise answer to your question. But yes, we have been running at more than 100% occupancy for quite some time. The reason is a lack of facilities in the communities for patients to go home to, and lack of home care type services so that they actually can go home with appropriate care. A lot of these cases are people that don't need to be in hospital, their acute phase is over, but we can't discharge them to something that isn't there. So in the longer term, that will be a priority in the province to address how to provide those services. If you look at international jurisdictions like the Netherlands, they are eliminating hospital beds and significantly increasing services that are in the home and in the local communities to exactly address that. So that's going to be a long-term change process through the government of the province, not something that we actually control, but you are correct, we are over capacity now. We're expecting better community-based services being developed.
Councillor Maloney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Lehman. And I guess my question is somewhat of maybe a bit of a follow-up of Councillor Glover's, but for me, it's always been about better health outcomes, better outcomes for the public, better outcomes for my parents, my in-laws, brothers and sisters in our community, our families. And when we talk about, you know, healthcare moving into the 21st century, obviously our focus is about better healthcare outcomes. And it may be a bit of a lofty question, but I'm wondering if you can share with us about how two acute care hospitals, new hospitals moving into the 21st century will provide Muskokans and the surrounding areas that MAHC serves better healthcare outcomes for the people of Muskoka.
Through you, Chair Lehman, that is in fact a lofty question, Mayor Maloney. it's a question that we alone can't resolve. And we talked about the pressures on the healthcare system to change. Along with our development of the two new hospitals and acute care beds comes a change in how other parts of the system are operated and delivered. And our Muskoka and area Ontario Health Team is making significant progress in moving forward to resolve some of those questions. So when you might have had a procedure done in a hospital in the past, that may, in fact, not take place in a hospital in the future. So part of the challenge that we're having is how do we make the hospital represent the future of healthcare when the other part of it isn't quite ready just yet. But we see significant and very, very promising changes with MAHC and the things they're doing. The hospital at home is a good example where we are actually providing an opportunity for people that might have otherwise been in the hospital are being moved out of the hospital quicker than they have in the past. But to be frank, the whole system is under pressure, and so we're doing our very best to provide these two new acute care hospitals that will take care of acute care. And we're hoping very much that the transformation of the rest of the health team, the rest of the health system here in Ontario, helps us make sure that those beds are filled with acute care patients rather than patients that should be receiving care elsewhere.
There was a Muskoka Algonquin.
No, I know.
Lofty answer to a lofty question.
Councillor Stone.
But they're steering a lot of it.
Thank you, Chair Lehman. On a
Who is
related
this
topic,
Maya?
there's a disturbing number of
That's what I
citizens in
wanted.
Muskoka that don't have a doctor. I know in Huntsville there's over 3,000, and
So,
it's
what
anticipated
I've
that's going to
done-
triple in the next few years.
So I've looked them
So
up.
can you confirm for me that state-of-the-art hospitals are a huge attractor, will this significantly attract new doctors to Muskoka?
OHT.
I'd give you a very simple answer is yes, but what you will see is the nature of what we are trying to build is not just two monoliths in Huntsville and Bracebridge. We are going to be building extensions out into the community to support healthcare in other locations. That is what will support your primary care people more so than a hospital will. But absolutely, a new state-of-the-art facility with all the amenities of daycare surgeries, diagnostics, are certainly things that attract people of a healthcare profession to come to your organization. Not only that, we have a partnership with the Northern Ontario Medical School, which is bringing the residents down through here. We are developing relationships with other medical schools who have people who have come or originated from this area who want to return and practice here as well. So the answer in general is yes, but specifically it has been shown empirically that the newer facilities are what bring people because they have the amenities they're looking for.
Region?
Where is it?
I'll go online to Councillor Sutherland.
Powassan? South River?
Thank you, and through you, Mr.
No.
Chair. I've had
I want to know who's steering it.
Well, yeah, that doesn't include
I've
Muskoka.
had a rough couple of weeks.
Huntsville's
I
outside that.
Berks
broke my wrist,
Falls?
and then
South River?
it's healing didn't go
Huntsville's
so well,
here.
and I had to have
Okay.
it rebroken
Mac
and
Tier
reset
is
and
just
metal
at the
plates
edge
put in
here.
Where's
yesterday.
Bracebridge
So,
and Gravenhurst?
They
that
don't count,
happened
do they?
in Aurelia Hospital. I began
they
in
in there?
Bracebridge Hospital, and so
They're
I
in
had
there, but they're fucking
time to
don't.
think about
You
hospitals
can't tell where they
in
are.
the past several days. And
It was made in Huntsville.
interestingly, the night or the late
So
afternoon
here's what
that
I
I
did.
broke my wrist to
I
begin with,
emailed them and asked them
I ended up
from you.
taking
Yeah,
You want to
yeah.
become a
an
member?
ambulance to Bracebridge Hospital
yeah.
Right?
and was there till about 1:30 at night and had a nice long discussion with the young doctor who was assisting in this somewhat horrific procedure I had to go through. And he was commenting that he knew people
Member of the-
I
from
said
around the
that, and
province
then
who
I
would
said,
love to live in
I wanna
Muskoka
know
and were other doctors
who's the
that he
founding
knew and
members,
graduated with. And
who's
we're
on
talking
the
about a
team
young
right
guy
now,
who must have been under 30.
and
But the
and then
biggest
to be a partner.
obstacle was housing. And so while we're
So I'm going
looking
to
at
ask
these,
Mark also.
state-of-the-art
Mark
hospitals with
Claremont.
increased
To dig into
capacity
it,
and the attractiveness to people like new young doctors to the area. I'm curious if your studies and your research have gone into the sort of support systems that those people will
Who's this
need
person?
That's Titania
to move
Sutherland.
I
here,
thought I recognized her from yes.
if they desire to work in those wonderful facilities and
She
what
broke
thought may
her
have gone
arm.
into that. Thank you.
I'm delighted to actually speak to this because I've been doing some interviews about home for healthcare employees in the region. It's not just a hospital issue, it's a municipal and regional issue, and it's got to be a partnership of work that will make that successful. But certainly, as part of our new builds, one of the things we are considering is how do we relate with private contractors to help build appropriate and sufficient housing for people to come to use as a base for them to start trying to find their own place to live, such as I did, and for potentially permanent housing. So it's absolutely part of the attraction to bring people here, not only because they want to live in this community, but also because they have something that will help them once they start to find a place to eventually live. Absolutely is part of it.
Well, we at one time had a nurses residence.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, thank you both for the presentation this morning. It was quite enlightening. One question for you both is, I represent from the township of Georgian Bay, and I've been on council for 9 years. I have not had anyone approach me or our township that I know of about this funding formula from the very beginning. So my question to you is, how much involvement have you had with the township of Georgian Bay? It's nice to hear people from Bracebridge, Huntsville, and Gravenhurst say how enthused they are to get this hospital, but I think you would get a different response from the folks in Georgian Bay. So please allow me or offer me what you've offered to the township of Georgian Bay and an explanation of how their tax dollars will will afford them better health care. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Lehman. We, in fact, did make a deputation to the Township of Georgian Bay Township. Mayor Ketcher, and I'm going to get the date wrong, but I'm going to say it was June of last year because I have actually lost track of how many deputations we made. We did come to your municipality, we did deputize to your council, and we did hear that you felt that you didn't use the hospitals to the same level of use that other municipalities did. So we were fully aware of this. We've had a number of conversations at the local share committee about the varying degrees of use, and the handout that we provided for you today reflects those numbers. I think it's important to understand that the geographic catchment of which hospitals are covered by which geographic catchment, it's a fluid boundary. So if I would say to you also that there are people in Almaguin, in East Perry Sound, that pay for and are expected to use a hospital in North Bay, but they choose to use the hospital in Huntsville. And so they had the exact same situation, but they realized that they did and you can see the usage numbers again in that information. So we did deputize. We have had ongoing engagement and discussions through the local share committee, and I guess I would offer my apologies if you felt that it hadn't been enough engagement, but we have, in fact, moved continuously around the catchment, and we have heard your message loud and clear. And I would tell you that I think the edges of the catchment are susceptible in many ways. When the ambulance picks you up, you don't actually get to choose which hospital you go to. You go to the hospital where they take you, and any of us that have, including Councillor Sutherland, that just recently has had an experience, that's what drives how acute care is managed from the emergency side of it. So again, if we need to have more discussion with representatives or people in your community, we're happy to do that.
Any more questions of the deputants or the presenters, I suppose? Okay, certainly more discussion to come. Thank you both for being here and providing the information, and of course for your work over many years towards this very significant project.
Did they vote on anything?
Okay, members of council, we have two deputations that were requested today, and I will need a motion first to allow the first one. It is moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald, Acting Councillor Fitzgerald, that the request for YWCA Muskoka for leave to make delegation with respect to the situation of girls and women in Muskoka be granted. Any comments or questions on this motion? Seeing none, those in favor of permitting the delegation? Anybody opposed? None? That carries. It's always embarrassing if we say no when they're here. So I will welcome to the podium Laura Sunday, who is Director of Community Relations.
So really what they're working on is those 2015 documents that we have.
Thanks for being here today, Laura,
Right.
and the floor is
Stop.
yours.
I want you to stop. Okay. That to stop, and I want. Recent items. Time player. File. Wait. Oh, sorry. That's why it didn't work. District. Delegation.
I got up about 4 or 5 times last night.
What?